Up next on Broadway Broadcasting's Fifth Row Center, from idea to opening night. The real timeline behind a Broadway show. From first draft to final curtain can take 7, 10, even 15 years. Why great musicals take time. And the Ghost Light, Broadway's oldest symbol of what comes next. Plus, we meet Olive Thomas and learn little-known details about her legend. Fifth Row Center is next.
Broadway Broadcasting presents Fifth Row Center, the secret to Broadway's best seats in the house. 3-time Emmy Award-winning journalist and acclaimed theater critic, Roma Torre, returns to television to reprise her signature theater reviews and exclusive insights. Plus, she brings us inside the 2025-2026 live theater season, and we bring you into the conversation with our exclusive live interactive roundtable. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for details. Join Roma Torre in the best seat in the house. This is Fifth Row Center.
We begin at the end, the Ghost Light, the single lamp burning when every show closes. It symbolizes many things, but at baseline, it is a victory for today and a promise for tomorrow. Welcome to Fifth Row Center, the talk show where you always have the best seat in the house for live theater everywhere. I'm Roma Torre. We're taking you on a journey this episode from the first draft to the final curtain. We show you how an idea becomes a Broadway show. This is more than just a professional curiosity, it's personal. After writing more than 3,000 Broadway reviews, I have become a show creator myself. I began writing the story about my mother 3 years ago. I actually performed it as a one-woman show in 2024, and now I'm expanding it into a full-fledged drama featuring an ample cast. Writing is hard, and I haven't even gotten to the collaborative part of the process yet, which can be a relief or a struggle, depending on who you're working with. You would think, though, after seeing so many shows, writing one myself would be a little easier, but it is not. And it has given me newfound respect for the intrepid and incredibly talented artists working together to create that singular sensation on the big stage.
Everyone, this is Becky.
A play can take 5 to 10 years before it's ready to be seen, and a musical takes even longer, 7 to even 15 years. For example, Lin-Manuel Miranda has said it took him 7 years of writing the book and lyrics for Hamilton before it opened on Broadway. The creators of Wicked say it took them over 9 years to turn the novel into a musical. And Hadestown spent 12 years in development before winning the coveted Best Musical Tony. These are not outliers. That's the norm. When you're seated in the audience, you see the result. But what you don't see is the staggering effort behind the show. Coming up in Broadway Unscripted, we're breaking down the steps from the page to the stage to the reprise. With the odds so low, every new project is something of a miracle. Here are the productions getting ready to open in New York, New Jersey, and across the country, and in the West End. Broadway's in the middle of a costume change. This is theater news for August 2026. Along West 44th Street, several marquees are flashing ticket advertisements instead of show titles. But the Hayes Theater already has a familiar name in lights. The Fantastics, the longest-running musical in history, lasting 42 years, will finally make its Broadway debut this fall. Previews begin in October. Off-Broadway, the starry new play Disruption opens at the Pershing Square Signature Center. The timely thriller follows a tech entrepreneur promoting an algorithm that promises to guide people's lives. Its cast includes John David Washington, yes, Denzel's very talented son, along with Conrad Ricamora, Elizabeth Stanley, and Jason Ralph. The boy wizard continues his long-running spell over Broadway audiences. At New York's Lyric Theater, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child stars the movie franchise's original Draco Malfoy, Tom Felton, who's extended his engagement. Felton does have several scheduled absences, including August 18th through the 23rd, so be sure to check the calendar before buying your tickets. His arrival last holiday season gave the production a major box office boost, helping it set a Lyric Theater record. And if you want to experience Cursed Child in its original epic two-part form, lasting a combined 5+ hours, time is running out. The West End production is presenting Part 1 in the afternoon and Part 2 that evening through September 20th. After that, the London production will close briefly and reopen early October as a condensed single-performance version of the complete story, the same format now seen on Broadway. And in Denver, a pivotal chapter in disability rights history is coming. 504, the musical, revisits the 1977 occupation of a San Francisco federal building where disabled activists remained for 25 days while demanding enforcement of the nation's first federal civil rights protection for people with disabilities. The world premiere, featuring a majority disabled company, runs August 6th through 23rd at the Denver Center for the Performing Arts. And that's a wrap for Theater News. So many great shows. Coming up in Broadway Unscripted, we're breaking down the steps from the page to the stage to the reprise. And later, we explore the legend of the Ghost Light. And I'm reviewing one of the most anticipated shows of the year.
Broadway Unscripted, the scoop for you in the fifth row seat. From every stage, what's trending and new. All in one live conversation with you.
In this episode of Broadway Unscripted, we follow a script's path from first draft to final curtain. And to guide us along the journey are two extraordinary people whose producing paths have led them both separately to the top of the line, the Tonys. Welcome to Fifth Row Center, Rose Caiola and Lamar Richardson. We're so happy to have you both. But ladies first, Rose, it cannot be a magic pixie dust that makes so many of your shows massive hits. Glenn Ross last season broke records. Sarah Snook.
If only I could remain always young.
And the
picture could
picture
grow
of
old.
Dorian Gray, which she starred and won the Tony, changed the industry. And there are almost too many more milestone productions to count, garnering 8 Tony wins in your career. And now you're breaking new ground, literally, opening your own theater. Lamar, you are a man with intention. At the tender age of 33, most people are still trying to figure out their first real career, but you've already produced 10 shows. You've won 3 Tony Awards already, 2 in one single night in 2024, and this year, of course, for Ragtime. And I would be remiss to not mention you hit some very impressive milestones along the way. The youngest Black person and the 4th Black person to win a Tony as lead producer. And that list includes Ken Harper, Glenn Davis, and Oprah. Now, I have to start off by saying you too don't look like the typical Broadway producer. And I'm thinking of the, cigar chomping middle-aged white guys, old Max Bialystock or Scott Rudin. But no, you guys break the mold. Thank goodness for that. But before we talk about what it is to be a producer, we do have to talk about the distinction between what is a lead producer and all those other names that you see above the title. So I want to start with you, Lamar, because I think your maiden voyage as a lead producer ended up with Ragtime. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So what were your responsibilities for that show? And how much power do you really have as the producer, as the lead producer?
To first answer your initial question, so a co-producer is purely financial. Usually you're responsible for helping to secure investments for the production under the lead producer's auspices. That can be either by you writing the check yourself as a co-producer or by raising the money from third-party investors. And my career up until Ragtime was 9 productions as a co-producer where I was raising money from investors. And as a lead producer, you come involved in terms of the creative decisions, in terms of casting, digging into notes and the creative process. You're really involved in weekly meetings that are budgetary, marketing purposes. You're really overseeing every single department of the production, pre-production before you get to that first preview, and during the entire run. You're making sure that everything is staying on the track, everything is running as according to plan, and you're really there to kind of be the conductor and also the firefighter to keep any fires out and to really keep all departments working together to make a seamless production evening after evening. What that looks like for me is setting the parameters up front and really just having the conversation to manage expectations with the creative to say, hey, this is how much capital we have for this particular reading or this particular workshop. We want to stay within these constraints. We have a reserve here for any extra things that we can move from one department to another, but it'd be great for everybody involved if we can stay within these parameters. And we always have an evolving conversation throughout that process. Should a costume budget come in over a couple $1,000s, is there some place else to pull that from? If not, we have to reevaluate. And just always just really making it about practicality. We're all working together for the betterment of this show. It's not about ego or I'm right or you're wrong. It's about this is what we have to do to get it to where we want to get it to.
Let me bring Rose into all of this. Now, Rose, you're a veteran producer. I went on IBDB, the Broadway League database. I counted, and correct me if I'm wrong, 56 productions that have your name listed as producer. Wow.
That sounds right.
And were you the lead producer on any of those particular productions? Because I know that you are the lead producer in a show that you're working on right now. But
Right.
talk to us about those other shows that you worked on. What exactly was your role? What were your responsibilities?
There is a vast distinction between co-producer and lead producer, and it's definitely changed post-COVID, because I was a part of this industry probably when Lamar was in high school. But pre-COVID, the co-producing teams were much more incorporated in the process. They had much larger influence. And for me, actually, it was a much more compelling position to attain, because you really felt much more a part of the whole genesis of the experience. We attended the biweekly meetings. We weighed in. Not that the lead producer was required to take any of our opinions or advice, but they usually listened and welcomed it, and we participated in the process. Post-COVID, all of that changed. And the co-producer position now is primarily an investment position. However, some lead managing members do incorporate their teams in different ways. And so I tend to gravitate toward lead producers, managing members that do really listen, because many of us have been in the industry for so long. And, for me, the best idea wins. You never know where you'll get a little grain of wisdom. And so
What may I ask why it changed? What happened?
Well, I think that COVID changed the industry in such a serious way. With that alienation of being in the same room, we were very much isolated. I think that managing members took it as an opportunity to be much more autonomous. And I think that that was kind of, a detrimental aspect of it. But in any case, we are where we are, and certain managing members conduct their teams differently than others. It's just a style. Certain people just want to be involved in the money aspect and not the creative aspect. For me, that's the joy, is the whole picture.
But let's walk through the whole process. If you, from beginning, as we talk about first draft to closing. First draft, how do you get your projects to begin with? What are you looking for? Is it a script? Is it a friend who says, I saw an off-Broadway show, you got to do it? Or how does it begin? And walk us through the whole process, Lamar.
There are different avenues to begin, but usually what it looks like most times is oftentimes agents or managers or playwrights directly are often pitching me. I'll get many submissions to, read this new play. Are you interested in securing the rights to it? And what that normally means is you pay a fee, usually for a year, sometimes 18 months or 2 years in some cases, to secure the rights to produce that play. And usually you have to secure the rights for different territories. So that could be the first class rights for Broadway, the rights for it to go to the West End, the rights to take it regionally. You can either take all of those rights and even the audio visual rights as well for a screen adaptation, or you can pick a specific bucket as well to limit it. And then usually from there, you're then going out to raise front money, unless you already have the development capital yourself to go out and have a reading. That could be a 29-hour reading or a tier 1 workshop or whatever. But there's usually steps that you go along the way to get it in front of people. Either you're first getting it on its feet, if it's something in the earlier stages and it needs development in terms of multiple drafts to get ready for a presentation, Or, you know, you're going out and having invited readings and you're bringing in your fellow friends to give you feedback and advice, or you're bringing in co-producers or front money investors to get people on board early so they can get excited about the project, to help you get that early capital to further develop the piece, right? And that can take, you know, several years sometimes of multiple readings, multiple workshops, to then get to a point where you're ready to attach a legitimate cast to go transfer it to Broadway or to the West End or whatever the case may be. And a lot of those steps along the way, like Rose said earlier, are very capital intensive. You know, it can take a lot of time because, you know, you don't want to rush the process. You want to really, you know, do it artistic justice. And, you know, me as a producer, I started as an actor. So my way into any story is always going to be character driven and world driven. You know, what is this saying now? What is the importance of this story and how can it bring us all together, right? That's why I love something like Ragtime, a show about 3 different walks of life coming together at the turn of the century, fighting for the same thing in different ways, right? And we all found our way into that story. That's the lens through which I pick anything that I attach myself to. And, you know, I think that early work now is important more than ever, new musicals and new plays. But like Rose said earlier, capital for those sometimes are extremely hard to find because people are extremely risk averse now. And it's on us to be the visionaries to really champion those stories and champion those young budding playwrights and book writers to really show the Broadway brass that they're worthy of having their story told as well.
I think the original works that are that don't have that, you know, familiar appeal, whether, you know, it comes from a movie or a famous celebrity or the music is familiar. I think it takes longer in general, right? And I go back to Hadestown. It took like 12 years to come to fruition. Something as great as Hamilton. That was like 7 years in the making with, you know, the great Lin-Manuel Miranda at the helm. So this is not a business for the faint of heart. Rose, let's go to you on this because you are the lead producer now on, and also co-writer on a show that started off-Broadway at the New World Stages here in New York.
Yes,
called
I'm
Rock and
super
Roll
excited and super proud of Rock and Roll Man.
Good golly, Miss Molly.
I mean, we really did the thing, you know, we did the journey. We did regional here. We were really beloved regionally. We did an off-Broadway development run, which garnered so much acclaim and attention. And I mean, we won the Adelco Award. We were honored by the Black community, which blew me away because it is a show about integration and desegregation and all the things that we should be striving towards still now today, which are still challenges for all of us. An obstructionist about a rebel who caused a cultural shift. And as a result, it was a catalyst for the civil rights movement. I mean, it brought the cultures, it brought Black and white people together through love of the arts. I mean, my God, what do we need right now? We need to bring people together and we need art. We got interest from the UK.
Okay.
And I said, you know, after that off-Broadway run, I couldn't go straight to Broadway because the economics just couldn't work at that moment. We didn't have enough time to build awareness. We reimagined the show with a team over there. We're waiting for a West End theater for spring or summer.
But this is
so thrilling.
Rose, this is, I mean, this is key. And this kind of encapsulates the big problem with this country. You're producing a wonderful story about an American man and American music, homegrown American music. And yet you can't get it off the ground from your off-Broadway production in America. You have to go across the pond to another country. So that just speaks volumes about the problem that we have here. Also, you were able to get subsidies to produce the show in the UK. We don't have anything like that in the United States.
That's very true. Yeah. And it's really a thrilling opportunity. And we could learn a lot from their model. But we really need to examine different strategies and potentially employ some of what they're doing and to enable new works to be created here. The way we did before. Let's see how we can support this artistic community better. And you know, otherwise it really won't endure. And
Yeah.
that would be tragic, because what would the New York City economy be without Broadway?
Yeah.
You know?
New York theater garners more money than all of, I love to say this, than all of the sports franchises combined. Broadway
Wow, I
brings,
love hearing that.
including Off-Broadway, of course.
Love
But
it.
that's,
Even after the Knicks? I don't
yeah.
know.
maybe this year is the
Yeah, this
one
year's an
exception.
exception.
Lamar Richardson, you are an inspiration to all those young folks out there who want to break into this very difficult business. And Rose, you are such a role model for women entrepreneurs. You've proven you can do it. And you both have explored a very challenging line of work, but you have achieved the success. You've reached the pinnacle. And I salute you both. And I say break a leg on all your future projects. So
Thanks so much, Roma.
Thank you so much, Roma.
Thank you, Lamar.
Thank you,
Absolute
Rose.
Take care. Nice meeting you.
And folks, stay with us, because coming up next, we're going to meet a Broadway historian with some haunting stories to tell you. Also, in our next show, you are going to find out how I ended up with this lovely piece of hardware. So create a little bit of suspense. So thanks for watching this, but stay tuned. Fifth Row Center continues.
Roma's Review, now you know.
Shifters is a beautiful meditation on love. Love found, love lost, and love rediscovered. Or is it? That question remains. But what I can say almost for sure is that you will fall in love with this play and the two characters who managed to hold the stage for 100 precious minutes. Playwright Benedict Lambe deserves high praise for crafting this profoundly universal work, because what starts out as a fun little rom-com turns into an existential riff on all the important stuff in our lives. True to its title, the play constantly shifts in time, but also marks a shifting in the characters' attitudes, behavior, and personality. They are Black Brits with African roots, and both actors deserve kudos for the convincing way their characters shift back and forth from impulsive teen to reflective adult and everything in between. In lesser hands, without costumes or props to distinguish their ages, the time shifts could be confusing. Heather Ajapong originated the role of Des in the UK, and it shows. She is a natural in the part, delivering pathos and humor with splendid conviction. Daniel Ezra, who's newer to the production as Dre, is equally impressive. He exudes charisma just standing there, and he movingly navigates the emotional twists and turns that rock Dre to his core. Shifters is a subtle love story that makes excellent use of music, familiar and original, to evoke powerful emotions. It may be a very small play, but it strikes a symphony of resonant chords. And this was also my very first visit to the Cherry Lane since its renovation. It's lovely. The seats are wider, and the intimate main theater now has upgraded lighting and sound that allow it to do much more as a production space. And tucked inside is Wild Cherry, a glamorous little supper club where you can have oysters, seafood, and a drink before or after the show, offering a very New York encore. It's been said a theater stage is never off. It's waiting. For this episode, we end where we began, with the ghost light. From the first draft to the final curtain, every show moves through the same cycle: development, rehearsal, performance, closure. And when it ends, the space resets. The ghost light holds that space in between, not as myth, but as continuity. And over time, that constant, an empty stage with a single light, has accumulated something else: stories, legends. Not documented history, but accounts repeated across productions, theaters, and decades. To break those down, where they come from, what's consistent, and why they persist, we turn to a theater historian, Jennifer Ashley Tepper. Hi, Jennifer. You are the author of the Untold Stories of Broadway series, the legacy of the history books left out. Already, I'm intrigued. The titles are wonderful. But
let's talk about the ghost light. I'd love to know the history.
Nobody's ever been able to prove the exact beginning of it. There are rumors it started in Shakespearean times. There's also rumors that it started when gaslight began to be the lighting equipment in the theater, because the stagehands didn't want to have to shut on and off the gaslight every night. So in order to keep those lines open, they kept one light on in the theater, and that was the ghost light. That seems to be one of the stories that a lot of historians agree on, but it's actually kind of magical that nobody quite knows 100% for sure how it began. There are fire code rules and equity rules that have chronicled the beginning of like the official ghost light requirements, and that was at the beginning of the 20th century.
Is there really a whole notion that they're keeping ghosts out? Is that, or inviting ghosts in?
Yeah.
What's the synergy there?
There really is. And I find that, I've interviewed from, the most legendary Broadway stars to people just starting out, and they all have ghost stories, and they all believe that the ghosts and the ghost light are kind of intertwined. I know there's a lot of stories about actors who will say goodnight to the ghosts every night as they walk out with just the ghost light shining. So it's very much like across all boundaries, across all kinds of theater artists, something that people identify with.
How did the saga of Olive Thomas end up becoming a ghost story at the New Amsterdam?
It is one of the most famous Broadway ghost stories for sure. And it's so famous that, in fact, it's affected practices from Disney. I find it so incredible that they take the ghost of Olive Thomas so seriously that they only have female guards at night, because Olive only reveals herself to male stage door people and male stagehands. I know. And so after a while of literally male stage door people and security people quitting because they were so haunted by this ghost, and people who didn't know Broadway history, people who don't come from the world of reading books about Olive Thomas, went, oh my God, I'm seeing this woman and she's walking through the wall and she has a bottle in her hand. And there were so many reports of things going on that Disney went, okay, let's try having women, because no woman ever saw her or complained about seeing her, or felt excited to see her, only men. So they said, we're going to just have women out overnight. And it's never been broken like that. That's still the case. There's also photos of her backstage that a lot of people in Aladdin and previous shows at the New Amsterdam will say hello, Olive, and goodnight, Olive, as they leave. She's a very present ghost back there.
While these are just myths, what is verifiable is this. Every theater maintains the same practice. Every stage goes dark and one light remains. That consistency is what allows the stories to exist and continue. From the first draft to the final curtain, the work ends. The space does not. And in that interval, the ghost light stays on. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you 5th row center. Good night, Olive.